Welcome back to On the Same Page. We are on Daf Vav Amar Aleph, 6a of Megillah. We are starting from the bottom of the page, 3 lines from the bottom at the end of the line where it says Ve'amar Rabbi Yitzchak. So the Gemara is bringing various memras, various statements of Rabbi Yitzchak, and we'll continue to do so going on to the next page. So Ve'amar Rabbi Yitzchak said, My dichsiv, what is the meaning of the pasuk? This is a pasuk in Tehillim. It says, Al titein Hashem ma'avaye rasha. Literally means like, Hashem should not fulfill the desires of the wicked. And then it says, Zimamo al tapek. Don't allow their conspiracies, their plans to be successful. Yarumu Sela, I guess they shouldn't be uplifted, or something like that. So, but Rabbi Yitzchak is going to interpret it. Amar Yaakov Lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Says Rabbi Yitzchak, this is Yaakov davening to Hashem. He says, Ribono shel olam, Master of the universe, Al titein le'esav harasha ta'avas libo. Do not give Esav, the wicked, the desires of his heart. So that's Al titein Hashem ma'avaye rasha. Hashem, don't fulfill the desires of the wicked. That's referring to Esav. And then he says Zimamo al tapik. Do not remove. Again, the way that the simple translation is like zamam, like what they plan al tapik. It shouldn't be fruitful. But he's interpreting it as Zimam al-Tabik, do not remove his zamam. What does that mean? Rashi tells us it's a zamam could be like a ring that you put in an animal's nose in their nostrils, and it's a way to control the animal. It keeps them, otherwise the animal will run wild. The only way to control it is with the zamam, with this ring that holds them in place. So don't remove that ring from Esav. Don't allow him to run wild. What does this refer to? Says the Gemara, Zu Garmamya shel Edom. This refers to Garmamya of Edom. And some have a girsa Garmania. So it refers to Germany. Germany at which stage of history is a good question. But, again, the more simple is the early German tribes. That Shilmaleheng Yotzin, if they would be allowed to get out, Machriven Kola Olam Kula, they would destroy the whole world. So the Gemara makes a reference, fascinating, to Germany or Germanic tribes, that if they would be allowed to be released, then they would destroy the world. And that's the tefillah of Yaakov Avinu, that they should zimam al-tapik, don't remove that which holds them back, the ring in the nose. Okay, then ve'amar Rabbi Chama bar Chanina, and Rabbi Chama bar Chanina says, and seemingly builds on this, and he says, Tlas meya katiri taga ika bigarmamya shel Edom. There are 300 crown wearers in this place, Garmamya of Edom. Utlas mea v'shisin v'chamisha marzavni ika buromi. And there are 365 marzavni. Rashi says it's duchos, like dukes or chieftains, in Rome. And so there's 300 crown wearers in Germany. I guess they could be like chieftains or princes, and there's 365 chieftains in Rome. Uvechol yoma nafki hani la'apehani, and every day they go out and fight each other. Umaktil chad minai, and one of them gets killed. Umitradi l'ukmi malka, and they struggle to appoint a king. So it seems to be describing, again, it's hard to. There's certainly a lot going on here. Some deep ideas that are hinted to here, but even on a surface level, there's some sort of struggle that it describes between the Romans and the Germanic tribes, and that really holds them both back from destroying us, destroying the world. again, why these numbers, why the Gemara chooses these numbers, they have deeper meaning. That needs further investigation. Okay. V'amar Rabbi Yitzchak, and Rabbi Yitzchak also said, so again, continuing with statements of Rabbi Yitzchak, nothing to do with the previous one. Im yomar lecha adam yagati v'lo matzasi. If a person tells you, I toiled, but I didn't find, it wasn't successful, al tamin, don't believe them. Lo yagati matzasi. If a person tells you, I didn't toil, but yet I was successful, I found, al tamin, don't believe them. But if they say yagati umatzasi, if they say I toiled and I found, tamin, then believe them. And hamimili b'divrei Torah. But this is when it comes to learning. When it comes to learning, if a person says, I toiled but I had no success, don't believe them. If they say, I had success without any toil, don't believe them. If they say, I toiled and I was successful, then we believe them. Aval b'masu umata, that's with Torah. But with busyness, siyata hu min shemaya. It's all up to heavenly assistance. And for everyone, it's different. The person could toil and be successful, if a person could toil and not be successful, if a person could not toil and be successful, so that's all in the hands of heaven. But when it comes to learning, when it comes to success in Torah, it's all based on a person's toil. But then we qualify that too, and we say, divrei Torah lo amran elo lichdudi. Even when it comes to Torah, we only mean with sharpening oneself. To sharpen one's abilities takes toil. Aval le'uk megirsa, but to remember things, to hold on to things, siyata min shemaya, that you need heavenly assistance. Certainly review helps, but ultimately, as much as the person reviews, they can still forget if they don't have the siyata d'shmaya, the heavenly assistance. And that, again, to some degree depends on how much toil, but to some degree will just be up to heavenly assistance. Ve'amar Rabbi Yitzchak, and Rabbi Yitzchak also said, Imra isa rasha shehasha mesachak eslo. If you see a rasha, if you see a wicked person and the time laughs for him. In other words, he's succeeding. Al tisgarebo. Don't fight him. Don't argue with him. Don't engage with him. Shenemar, as the pasuk says in Tehillim, it says, Al tischar b'mereim. Don't. Here we're understanding. I mean, don't fight with the evildoers. V'lo. Not only that, El shedrachav matzlichin. But his ways will be successful. If a rasha is having success, he could continue to have success. Shnamar quotes a different pasuk in Tehillim. It says, this is in chapter Yud, Parak Yud, chapter 10, Yachilu diracha b'choles. And here he's understanding Yachilu to mean success. His ways are successful at all times. He merits in judgment. In court. Now, I think we mean in a human court. If things are going well for this rasha, they can go well. He can even have success. He'll be successful. He'll merit in judgment in court. Shenemar, as it says, Marom mishpatecha minegdo. Your justice is high from him. Meaning, I guess it's not going to apply to him. Not only that, ela sheroeh b'sonav. Not only that, but he'll see success over his enemies. Shenemar, as it says, Kol tzorav yafiach bahem. All of his enemies, he'll blow on them and they'll fall over. So if you see that a rasha is having success, basically stay away. He might continue. If he's on a trajectory of going up, you stay out of his way, basically. Okay, so the Gemara asks, Eini, is that true? V'ha'am Rabbi Yochanan mishum Rabbi Shimon Yochai. Rabbi Yochanan said over from Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, Mutter li'skaris b'rishalim b'ol mazeh. You're allowed to engage and provoke and fight Rishayim in this world. Shenamar, as the pasuk says, quotes a pasuk in Mishlei, Ozvei Torah yahalu rasha. Those who abandon Torah, they praise the wicked. The Shomrei Torah yiskarabam, but those who guard the Torah fight them. So you're allowed to engage and fight with the wicked. Vitanya, and another brisa says, Rabbi Dostai bar Matur Amar, Mutter liskaris b'Rishayim b'ol mazeh. Rabbi Dostai bar Matur says you're allowed to fight against the wicked in this world. And he also quotes that pasuk according to the Bach's Girsa. V'im lachshach adam lomar. Now, if somebody will whisper to you, somebody will tell you, al tischar b'mereim v'atakana v'osei avla, that the pasuk says, don't fight with mereim, don't fight with the wicked, and don't engage with those who do evil. Says the Gemara, says Rabbi Dostai, Mishalibo Nokfal Merkain. Somebody who's afraid is telling you that. Somebody who's afraid of his own averos. He has his own sins. He doesn't have merit. That's why he's saying to stay away from Rishayim, to not fight them. But that's not what the pasuk means. Ella, rather, the pasuk means Al Tischar b'Mereim. Doesn't mean don't fight them. It means don't be like them. Don't grab. It could mean to grab. Don't grab on them. Don't grab onto their ways. Lios Kimereim, to be like the wicked. V'atikane b'osei avlan, don't be jealous of those who perform iniquities. Lios kosei avlan, to be like the sinners. The Omer, another example of this is it says, Al yikane libcha b'chatayim, your heart shouldn't be jealous of sinners. So that's what Rabbi Dostai said, that you could fight them, and the pasuk means don't be like them. It doesn't mean don't fight them. So we have a contradiction. On the one hand, we have a statement of Rabbi Yitzchak who says that if you see a Rasha who's successful, don't fight with him. And on the other hand, we have Rabbi Yochanan, the name of Rishon Bar Yochai, saying you're allowed to fight Rishayim, and the same Rabbi Dostai Bar Matun. So it seems to be a contradiction. The Gemara says, Lo Kashya, it's not a contradiction. Habamili didei, habamili dishmaya. It depends what you're engaging with him in. If you're fighting with him over your own personal things, that's where we say don't. Stay away. But if you're fighting with him over mili dishmaya, matters of heaven, so then you're allowed to, and you could see success. That's one answer. V'bayisema, or you can say alternatively, haba mili didei. They could both be talking about your own matters, and even still there's times where you're allowed to fight against a Rasha. The lokashya, there's no contradiction. Ha b'tzadik gamar, ha b'tzadik she'enu gamar. It depends how righteous the tzaddik is. If he's a tzaddik gamar, he's a total, complete tzaddik, then it's okay. But if he's not a tzaddik gamar, then he should stay away. The Amar Rav Huna, as Rav Huna says, Ma'idechsev, what's the meaning of the pasuk? In Chavakuk, it says, Lama tabit bogdim. Why do the rebellious ones stare? Tacharish bivala rasha tzadik mimenu. And you're silent. I think he's speaking to Hashem. He's saying, why do you look upon the rebellious ones, and you're silent when the Rasha swallows up one who's a greater tzaddik than him? Tacharish bivala rasha tzadik mimenu. You're silent when the Rasha swallows up someone who's a greater tzaddik than him. So he says, you see from this verse, tzaddik mimenu baleya, tzaddik gamor eina baleya. Now it could be that he swallows up somebody who's a greater tzaddik than him, but not a tzaddik gamor, not somebody who's a total tzaddik. That you wouldn't see. You wouldn't have that God, Hashem is silent when he swallows up a tzaddik gamor. A greater tzaddik than him, yes. A tzaddik gamor, no. So that's another possibility, is that when it says it's okay to fight against Rishayim, the wicked, it means if you're a tzaddik gamor, if you're completely righteous, but a regular tzaddik, somebody who's just more of a tzaddik than the Rasha, shouldn't engage with them. V'bayisema, or alternatively we can answer, Shah misachekes lo shani. That it's different when again the time lapses from when he's seeing success. Rabbi Yitzchak didn't say you can never fight Rishayim. He said if you see a Rasha who things are going well for him, don't fight against him. But Rabbi Yochanan, in the name of Rishon Bar Yochai, was talking about in general, not when the Rasha is seeing success necessarily. Just in general, he says you're allowed to engage with the wicked, and if they're seeing success, that's a different story. Okay. Amar Ula said, we're on the first wide line, the middle-ish lines. Italia shel Yavan, Italy of Greece. So Safari thought this means southern Italy. So some area, I think in Italy. I guess it could be an area in Greece. Actually, it's in Italy because it says Zekrach Gadol shel Romi. This is the great city of the Romans. I don't know if it refers to Rome or something else. It's 300 parsas by 300 parsas. It's a very large, enormously large city, and this has to be an exaggeration, but it's very large. V'yeshba shin samachei shvakim, and he has 365 markets, equal to the number of days in the solar year. Vikatan shebekulam, the smallest of those markets, shel mochre ophos. It's where they sell birds, poultry. Vahavya shisha asar mil al shisha asar mil. And that smallest market is 16 mil by 16 mil, which is 4 parsas by 4 parsas. Umelech soed b'chol yom be'echad mehen. And the king, the emperor, he dines in a different market each day. There's 365. There are 365 days of the year. He goes to a different market for lunch, for dinner, every day. V'hadarba, and someone who lives there in that city, afapi she'eino nolad ba, notel pras mi beis hamelech. Even if he wasn't born there, he gets a pras, an allowance. He gets a meal or something from the king. They have social programs that everybody gets a meal from the government. V'hanolad ba, and if you're born there, afapi she'eino darba, even if you don't live there, notel pras mi beis hamelech, you're also entitled to this pras, to this allowance. U'shloshes alafim b'nei bani yesh bo, and it has 3,000 bathhouses in it. V'chamesh meos chalonos malin ashan chutz l'choma, and it has that the bordering walls have 500 windows to carry the smoke. I don't know if it's smoke from bathhouses or smoke from the city, outside the city. And this keeps the walls from getting smoky because the smoke goes out. Tzido echad yam. One side of the city is the sea. V'tzido echad harim. One side is mountains, ugavos and hills. Tzido echad mechitza shel barzel. One side has an iron wall. V'tzido echad chulsis u'metzula. And one side is chulsis u'metzula. Rashi says it's like a place full of small stones, gravel or something. But so we have this description of this tremendous city. I don't know if it's Rome or a different city. The Maharsha says that the reason why we're describing how great the city is relates to a Gemara elsewhere where I guess the Gemara at the end of Makos, where it talks about how successful Rome is, and it says, Rabbi Akiva says, if this is what Rishayim get, so just imagine what Tzaddikim will get. And so sometimes we look at the success of the Rishayim, of the wicked, and we can just imagine what reward waits for the Tzaddikim. Okay. New Mishnah. So back to the laws of Megillah. The Mishnah says, Karu es ha-Megillah ba'adar harishon. If a person read Megillah in the first Adar, because they thought there was only one Adar, v'nis abra hashana, and then based in the Sanhedrin, decided to make a leap year. So before there was a set calendar, it might not be until Adar that they decide they're going to add on another Adar based on the seasons and things. So it could be it was already after Purim. They already read the Megillah on Purim, and then they said, actually, there's another Adar. So it says, Karen Osab Adar Sheni. We read it in the second Adar. So the Megillah has to be read in the second Adar. And Ein being Adar Harishon la Adar Hasheni el Kriyas HaMegillah Matanas Lev Yogim. The only difference in the mitzvos between the first Adar and the second Adar is reading the Megillah and gifts to the poor. But some other mitzvahs, not clear what, but if we mean Shalach Manos or maybe something else, we'll see the Gemara is going to bring another thing in. So it sounds like they might apply in the first Adar, so we'll have to see about that. But it says, this Ein being Adar Harishon Adar Hasheni el Kriyas HaMegillah Matanas Lev Yogim. The only difference between the first Adar and the second Adar is reading the Megillah and gifts to the poor, which only are done in the second Adar. And just spoiler alert, so this Ein Bain, there's no difference, is going to set off in the Mishnayos a whole list of other Ein Bains that don't necessarily have to do with Megillah. So once we get to the next Mishnah, we're going to start Mishnah after Mishnah of Ein Bain this. The only difference between this and this, it's going to compare two similar things and give a difference, and it's going to take us away from discussions relating to Purim and Megillah. But the first one, which sets it off, is about Adar, that there's no difference between the two Adars except reading the Megillah and Matanos Lev Yomim, gifts to the poor, which are done in the second. Says the Gemara, Haga Inyan Seder Parshios, Zeb is Eshavin. The implication is that with regards to the Seder Parshios, they are equal. What's the Seder Parshios? So in Adar, we have 4 special Parshas. We have Parshas Shkalim, Parshas Zachor. Those are read before Purim. Right, Parshas Shkalim is the first Shabbos in Adar. Parshas Zachor is the Shabbos before Purim. We have Parshas Para, and we have Parshas HaChodesh. So we have 4 special Parshas in Adar, and the implication is that if there's no difference between the first Adar and the second Adar except for Megillah and Matanos Lev Yomim, the implication would be that we read the 4 Parshas both in the first Adar and the second Adar. So the Gemara says, Mani, which Tana would our Mishnah fit like? Mani Masdising, who's the Tana, who's the author of our Mishnah? Because the Lo Tana Kama, Velo Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yossi, Velo Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. Because we're going to bring a Brisa, and the Brisa is going to have 3 opinions, and our Mishnah doesn't fit like any of them. It doesn't fit like the Tana Kama, the first opinion doesn't fit like Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yossi, and it doesn't fit like Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. Did Tanya, because we learned in a Brisa. Karu es ha-Megillah ba'Adar harishon. Same case as our Mishnah. The Brisa says, if they read the Megillah in the first Adar, Vinis Abra Hashana, and then they made it into a leap year, they added a second Adar, Karanos Abadar Hasheni. You have to read it in the second Adar. Shekol mitzvah shenagos b'sheni nagos barishon. Because all the mitzvahs that apply in the second Adar apply in the first Adar. Chutz mi-mikra Megillah, except for reading the Megillah, says the Tana Kama. So the Tana Kama says, you have to read the Megillah again in the second Adar, because all the mitzvahs apply except for Megillah. Does not apply in the first Adar, so you have to read it again in the second Adar. Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yossi Omer, Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yossi says, Ein karnos Adar Hasheni. You don't have to read it in the second Adar. Shekol mitzvah shenagos b'sheni nagos barishon. Because all the mitzvahs that are practiced in the second Adar are also practiced in the first one. And so you don't have to read it again. You read it in the first one, you're all set, and you don't have to read it again. That's Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Omer, Mishum Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says the name of Rabbi Yossi. Af karnosa ba'adar hasheni. No, you read it in the first one, but then they added a second Adar. You have to read it again in the second Adar. Shekol mitzvah shenagos b'sheni ein nagos barishon. Because all the mitzvahs that apply in the second month do not apply in the first month. And so, including Megillah, Megillah applies in the second one, it does not apply in the first one, and so you have to read it again. Vishav, now all these opinions are equal, they all agree, behesped u'v'tainis, that when it comes to eulogizing and fasting, she'asurin b'zeh u'v'zeh, that it's forbidden to fast both Adar Rishon and Adar Sheni on the days of Purim, so on the 14th and 15th of Adar, whether it's the first Adar, whether it's the second Adar, it is forbidden to fast. Everybody agrees to that. Okay, so we have 3 opinions, and first, before the Gemara gets back to its question of, how do any of these fit with the Mishnah, it wants to first examine the Brisa itself, because ask the Gemara, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, Hainu Tana Kama. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel seems to be saying the same thing as the Tana Kama, the first opinion. So the first opinion said, again, the case is you read the Megillah in the first Adar, and then they added a second Adar. So the Tana Kama said, the first opinion said that you have to read it again in the second Adar, because all the mitzvahs that apply in the second one apply in the first one except for Megillah, so you have to do Megillah again. And Rabbi Shimon Gamliel said that you have to read Megillah again, because all the mitzvahs that apply in the second one don't apply in the first one, and therefore you have to read it again. So the truth is, if you pay attention, they're not really the same, but they're both the same with regards to that you have to read Megillah again, because it didn't apply. So what exactly are they arguing about? So Amar Papa Seder Parshios Ika Benayu. Where they're at odds is with regards to the Seder Parshios, these 4 Parshas that we read, these 4 special maftirs that we read during During Adar, that's where they're going to be at odds. In what way? The Tanakama Savar, because the Tanakama holds Lichatchila B'Sheni. The Tanakama, the first opinion, holds that really Lichatchila you would read them in the second one, Adar. The Avod Barishon, Avod. But if you read them in the first one, then you did it. Barmi Mikra Megillah. But that's the exclusion of reading the Megillah. De'af Agav Dekar Barishon Kar B'Sheni. That even if you read it in the first one, you have to read it again in the second Adar. So that's why the Tanakama said that all mitzvahs that apply in the second one can be practiced in the first one, meaning the 4 parshios. They could be practiced in the first one. It's not the ideal, but if you did it, then you did it. And you don't have to do it again, as opposed to Megillah. That was the Tanakama. Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yossi Savar, and the middle opinion, Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yossi held, Afil Mikra Megillah, L'chatchila Barishon. And Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yossi holds that even reading the Megillah, you can do L'chatchila. From the start, you can do it in the first Adar, no problem. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Savar, and the third opinion, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel holds, Afilu Seder Parshios, even the 4 parshas, Ikaru Barishon, Karu B'Sheni. If you read them in the first one, you have to read them over in the second one, because he said that all the mitzvahs that apply in the second Adar do not apply in the first Adar. They don't apply, and if you dig it, it doesn't work, you have to do it over. That is Rabbi Shimon Gamliel's position. So ask the Gemara Mani. So now going back to our Mishnah, who does it go like? I Tanakama Kashya Matanos. If you tell me it's the Tanakama, so Matanos Lavyonim is going to be a problem, because our Mishnah says that there's no difference between the first Adar and the second Adar, except Megillah and Matanos Lavyonim, gifts to the poor. In other words, our Mishnah holds that not only do you have to do it over if you did Megillah in the first month, you have to do it over in the second month, but even Matanos Lavyonim you have to do over. Though that's the difference between the first Adar and the second Adar. The Megillah and Matanos Lavyonim only apply in the second Adar. But the way that the Tanakama said it was that all the mitzvahs applied both in the second and the first, except Megillah. But he doesn't exclude Matanos Lavyonim. It sounds like he would say, just like the 4 parshas, that if you did them in the first, it's fine. B'diavad, you did it, you're done. Same thing with Matanos Lavyonim. So the Mishnah doesn't fit with the Tanakama. Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yossi, Kashya Nami Mikra Megillah. And if you tell me it's Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yossi, that it's certainly not, because then Megillah is a problem, because Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yossi holds you could read the Megillah in the first Adar, and our Mishnah says you can't, you gotta do it over. And Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, Kashya Seder Parshios. And if you tell me it's Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, so then you're going to run into an issue with the 4 parshas, because we started off with an inference from our Mishnah. We said the only difference between the first and second Adar is Megillah and Matanos Lavyonim, implying, said the Gemara, in Seder Parshios, with regards to the 4 parshas, they're equal, and you could do it. At least b'diavad, if you dig it in the first one, the 4 parshas, that would be enough. That's what the Mishnah held. But Rabbi Shimon Gamliel said that none of the mitzvahs apply in the first Adar, even the 4 parshas. So which of these? We don't have anybody that fits with our Mishnah. Okay. So says the Gemara, meaning ideally we don't want to make it a 4th opinion, we want it to fit with one of the 3 opinions that we have on record. So the Gemara says, Olam Tanakama. No, really, our Mishnah is like the Tanakama here. But our Mishnah mentioned Matanos Lavyonim doesn't apply in the first Adar, and the Tanakama implied that it does, that you could do it in the first Adar. At least if you did it, you'd be Yotze, you'd fulfill your obligation. So V'tana Mikra Megillah V'uadei Matanos Lavyonim. So you'll see, no, the Tanakama mentioned reading the Megillah, but the same would be true for Matanos Lavyonim, because they're really dependent on each other. As we learned in an earlier Gemara, that we want to do Matanos Lavyonim on the day that you read the Megillah, because that's when the aniyim, that's when the poor are expecting their money. So it should match up. So really, when the Tanakama said that all the mitzvahs that apply in the second Adar apply also in the first, except for Megillah, he meant except for Megillah and Matanos Lavyonim, because those 2 go together. He just didn't mention Matanos Lavyonim. And that would make him consistent with the Mishnah, which also said that the difference between the first Adar and the second Adar is Megillah and Matanos Le'avyonim. V'bayisema. Or if you want, you could say like this. We could say that our Mishnah fits with Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. And the Mishnah is just missing words. It needs further, you need to insert some words to understand it. And this is what it's really saying. Ein bein arba asar sheba adar rishon li'yadal sheba adar hasheni. There's no difference between the 14th of Adar Rishon or the first Adar and the 14th day of the second Adar. Elo mikra Megillah umatanos, except for Megillah and Matanos Le'avyonim. And what are you supposed to infer from that, from our Mishnah? So we had inferred, but they're the same, meaning when we say there's no difference except for this, so we're saying, but they're the same for something. What are they the same for? So originally we said they're the same for the 4 parshas. The 4 parshas could be done in either one. So now we're saying, no, that's not what you're supposed to infer. What you should infer is halini has been a tainus shaving. With regards to eulogizing and fasting, they're equal. That there's no the only difference is Megillah and Matanos Le'avyonim. But what should we infer? But for other things, they're the same. What other things? Hesper and tainus, eulogizing and fasting, that both apply both in the first Adar and the second Adar. And that would be consistent with the brisa that we brought. That's like everybody agrees to that you're not allowed to fast or eulogize in either Adar on the days of Purim. But in terms of the order, the parshas, the 4 parshas, it's just not talking about that at all. And there's no inference with regards to that, and therefore it could be consistent with Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, who says that those have to be in the second one, and they can't be done in the first Adar. Okay. Amar Rabbi Chia bar Avin, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Chia bar Avin says the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Hilchasa Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, She'amar Mishum Rabbi Yossi. So the halacha is in accordance with Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, that who, in the name of Rabbi Yossi, who said that none of the mitzvahs can be done in the first Adar, they have to be done in the second Adar. Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, Ushneim mikra echad darshu. Both opinions, both those who say that you cannot read the Megillah in the first Adar, has to be in the second Adar, and Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yossi, the middle opinion of our brisa, says that you could, l'chatchila, you're allowed to read the Megillah in the first Adar. Both of them are learning it out from the same pasuk. Pasuk says, B'chol shana v'shana, right? That you should do it every year. It's a pasuk in the Megillah. We had it earlier to teach us that it should be consistent every year. So, what would be being consistent if there's 2 Adars? What would be consistent with other years? So Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yossi savar. Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yossi holds, B'chol shana v'shana, that you should do it like you do it every year. Makol shana v'shana adar hasamuch l'shvat. Just like every year, you do it in the Adar that follows Shvat, right? Shvat Adar. Afkan Adar hasamuch l'shvat. So too, you should do it in the Adar that follows Shvat, which is the first Adar. And that's why Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yossi says you should read it in the first Adar, because you want to be consistent with other years where you read it in the Adar that follows Shvat. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel savar. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel holds bechol shana v'shana. You should do it like you do it every year. Makol shana v'shana adar hasamuch l'Nisan. Just like every year you do it in the Adar that's right before Nisan. So afkan adar hasamuch l'Nisan. So too this year when there's 2 Adars, you should do it in the Adar that's next to Nisan. So that's why you do the second Adar, because you should be consistent. It should always be next to Nisan. Okay. Now, but what's like really behind it? The Gemara wants to know. Why one or the other? So Bishlam, Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yossi. So we understand Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yossi, Mistaber Taima. His reasoning makes sense to say that he says do in the first Adar the one that's next to Shvat. Why? De'eng ma'aviring al mitzvos, because we don't pass over mitzvos. So we don't want to pass over the first Adar. We should want to do the mitzvah right away. So it makes sense that it should be done in the first Adar. Ela Rabbi Shimon Gamliel my Taima. But what's Rabbi Shimon Gamliel's reasoning that he says, no, do it in the second Adar? What is so important about doing it in the second Adar? So Amar Rabbi Tavi. So Rabbi Tavi says, Taima Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, The reason of Rabbi Shimon Gamliel is because of the following. Because mismach geula legeula adif. Because to juxtapose, to join one geula next to the other geula, that's adif, that's more preferable. We have, in Nisan, we celebrate the geula, the redemption from Egypt, and in Purim we celebrate the redemption from Achashverosh and Haman, and we should celebrate these adjacent to each other. And there's, Gemara doesn't tell us exactly what, but there's some great value in putting these next to each other, perhaps because one was b'derech hateva, one was through natural ways in Purim, and the other one was through miracle. And it kind of reminds us it's all the same God that brought about both. But okay, lots of ink has been spilled about to try to explain what is it about being mismach, joining together, juxtaposing one geula with the other. But that's the reasoning of Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, that he insists that the Megillah should be read in the second Adar when we have two Adars, because we want to have the celebrations, the two redemptions, adjacent to each other in Adar Sheni, the second Adar, immediately followed by Nisan when we celebrate Pesach.